So it's going to reveal cracks in the foundation that are not necessarily technology solves. It's going to tie back to culture. It's going to tie back to where you have strong systems. It's going to tie back to where you have strong, open, honest, direct, two-way communication and where that lacks. It's going to point to things that are not actually AI things to be solved.
Yo, it's the future. Don't hit the snooze. AI is here giving humans the boost. Team Humans rolling. Brains in the game with Dan Turchin. Y'all remember the name. People reign in the mix. No stopping the flow. Better work, better life. Yeah, we're ready to go. Robots and humans a collab, you know. Okay, let's start the show.
Welcome back to AI and the Future of Work. This is Dan Turchin from People Reign, and got a special guest and a special event this week. We are recording this one live from Uplift by Better Up. We're here in San Francisco, and I'm so excited to introduce you to today's guest. I'm here with Theresita Richard from Patagonia, an amazing organization, and I'm so excited to introduce Team Human to my new friend, Theresita. Why don't you get started by sharing with us a little bit about your background and how you got to where you are today?
Yeah. Okay. So a little bit about my background. I always like to start and say that I am a creative soul who also uses both sides of my brain. So I'm a creative soul and an engineer at the same time. Those two things come together. And how all of that has gone on my journey. I started my career as an industrial engineer working in the manufacturing environment. We had this infusion of technology that changed how the work worked. And I got the gift of an assignment to lead a 2-year project to really think about how work would change, what that meant for our people, skilling, culture, communications, all the things. And it opened up a whole new pathway around what I then learned was human resources. I was like, I want to do more of this human work. Took me on a journey through retail, moved out of manufacturing into retail, got to work with a number of different really amazing retailers in the big box world with Home Depot and Target, into more experiential with Starbucks, and in the luxury retail space with Nordstrom. And then did a short stint into financial services. The thread has always been humans, possibility, innovation, talent, and how do you bring all of those things together? And then in doing that, that opened an opportunity or a world around diversity and inclusion and belonging. And how do you create spaces for all to thrive? And then almost 3 years ago, my 3-year Adversary, as we like to call it, will come in May. I just started this journey with Patagonia to be their Chief People and Culture Officer and Global Head of Justice and Belonging.
We were getting to know each other in the elevator, and I said, when I saw that you were here, and I know the lineage, we have a mutual friend in Dean Carter from Patagonia. I said, I must meet Theresita because it's such a unique culture.
It really
Patagonia. Congratulations on your 3-year Pataversary.
Thank you.
Tell us about what's unique about the culture of Patagonia.
Yeah, you know what? I think Patagonia is a really special place. In my first week there, we were having conversations around what it means to be extractive and how can we add more to people's lives than what we are taking away. And that was a different conversation. And what I would say, while we think of ourselves more as the kind of anti-corporate corporation, but to be in that work environment, having that type of conversation. Also, same week, we're talking about, like how do we save and really increase access to public lands, as same breath as we're talking about the business. And so what I love about the experience is that it's kind of a little bit contrarian, very much committed to doing business in a different way, and really thinking differently about like what you can do when you really come together, are successful as a business, what you can do in the world. So I really feel like this experience is like no other I've had before.
One of the things that I find unique about the culture of Patagonia, going back to the founding story, and Yvonne, such a strong founder, such a mission-driven organization, is his insistence that, my words, not his, but that the company has a soul.
Yeah.
This may be putting words in your mouth, but I feel like you've been entrusted with nurturing that soul of Patagonia. How do you think about the responsibility that you have and the enormous shoes that you have to fill?
Yeah, I feel a deep responsibility when I think about our employees and I think about the legacy that is Patagonia. And it's a heavy responsibility to hold. Um, to think about like what are the future stories in the company when we have such iconic stories of our past. But I also think, I was in a conversation, this was probably a couple of weeks ago, and what was coming through so clearly in that was that our responsibility now is to create those future stories, the future stories that will be written about this company. And what I think about, especially when I get a chance to talk to what I'll call the humans of Patagonia, to coin a phrase, but when I get to talk to our people, they have families, they have their own stories of why they came to Patagonia, they have their own stories of what it is like to work at Patagonia. And what I think about is the conversation, whether it's at their dinner table or with someone that they love or someone they deeply trust. And when they're talking about their workday, what are they saying? And I feel that responsibility that the work that we are stewarding, not just the impact that we have on the planet, but the impact that we have on our people, that really matters. And I do feel a deep responsibility for that.
I imagine perpetuating that culture is a combination of you intentionally select people who will fit in at Patagonia. And I imagine in some cases, people arrive at Patagonia and the culture shapes them. How do you think about building up this culture and making sure that you maintain that mission alignment, given that people from all walks of life join the organization? Are they made Patagonians or do they show up Patagonians?
Yeah, you know what? I think that's a great question. And the word you said, alignment, is the one that I think really matters. I would say more so than fit. It really is around like, do you align with the purpose of the company? When we talk about being a responsible business, like that's not just something that's written down, in a book or just a phrase, but it really shows up in decisions and debate and what the day to day looks like. And so, are you aligned with that? So, what I always talk to people about is like, does this feel aligned with where you are in your life right now, in your season of life, in the season of the company? And when that's a match, that's really good. I would say that, do you come as a Patagonian or are you shaped? I think you're drawn in a couple of different ways. Like there are people, we've learned this because we've talked to our people about it, that are here for a reason, a season, or a lifetime. Some people have intentionally sought us out because they want to work for a different type of company. They are passionate about the environment. They are either passionate about their sport and they want to work for a company that really supports and engages that. And they're here, like they very intentionally, I am here for this reason. Some people are here for a season in their life. Maybe they're in college and they're working in our stores or working in a distribution center. And they're like, I'm here for this particular season. And then there are those that they have been there, like this is where I'm going to be for life. And I think through that, the thread that comes through is the passion about something. And when you're then here within the company, there are shared passions, I think, that start to form around using your voice, around democracy, around, doing good for the planet and like really working on that. And it shows up like in the day to day. So you can't help but to be shaped by that.
There are many marauding capitalists out there who hear the vision and mission of Patagonia and say, this organization will never succeed because we're going to sacrifice profits for purpose. How do you defend that statement?
I think that statement is a bunch of crap. I mean, I really believe in the and it is our mission or purpose statement is we are in business. We are a for-profit business. We are in business to save our home planet. We can't get to the second part without the first part. And if you do the first part without any attending to the second part, it all falls apart. So you need to have both of those things. And so when we talk about being a responsible company and we talk about how that shows up in our decisions and in our choices, we need to be successful and we aim to be successful because if it's just Patagonia doing this, it's not going to achieve the mission. It's not going to achieve the purpose. We want others to come along and be in this with us. We want other companies to also pick that up and say, I can do this too. No one's going to pick up and say, I can do this too if we are not successful. And so it is profit with a purpose. Theresita's perspective.
It's working. What do you do as a culture when there are members of the team that don't share that value system? Does the culture have a way of I should say self-correcting when it finds, people who don't share the mission or believe in the vision?
Yeah, I think it does. We have an employee experience principle. We pinned those maybe even full 2 years now. We pinned employee experience principles, and one of them was pair clarity with choice. And I think when you are within the organization, the clarity that comes forward pretty quickly and definitely over time is, am I in alignment or not? And then you have a choice to make, right? Because the values that we ground in, our purpose, the long game that we are really here to play, like that is steady and that is not changing. And so I think because of that, and that is so strong, the culture has a way of kind of weeding you out if that's not your thing. And I would say, it's okay if that's not your thing. It just means that Patagonia is not the place for you. And that's where that choice comes in and really treating people as humans and as adults with agency. We want to give you enough clarity, and the culture should give you enough of that you can make that choice.
It must be hard to enforce that.
Yeah, you know what? Even that word enforce, I kind of shiver a little bit. I'm like,
I'm glad you say that.
Just because that feels almost like compliance.
Yeah.
And I think it's you said it a little earlier around the company has a soul. And I think that's what it is. Like there's a soul, there's a heartbeat, there is a way of being. And you can find yourself within that, or maybe you won't find yourself within that. And I think the goal is that you are so clear on your values and who you are, that the system does the work for you.
Natural selection.
Natural. Yeah, I believe so.
So to the point you just made, it used to be that HR was synonymous with compliance.
Oh, I hate that.
They'll pay you and they'll be there when you have a complaint, when something goes wrong.
Yeah.
Here we're sitting at the Uplift event by Better Up, and we're surrounded by people who share a passion for delivering exceptional human experiences. And it feels really special to be a part of a small but growing community. What would you say the subset that chooses to come to Uplift, those people, leaders, how do they see the world differently than the ones who have, not chosen to be here with us today?
Yeah, I think they believe it can be better. And when I think about the work that Better Up does, I think that there's a deep commitment around like human thriving and flourishing and bringing science and thoughtfulness and coaching and care to how that can become a reality, not just for the most senior executive or leader, but making it available for everyone, which I think is really powerful, that access and that opportunity in a way that like nurtures and nourishes the human soul. And the outcome of that is stronger performance. It's greater contribution and impact. And so I think the people that are here, I mean, I feel it from, my fellow participants in this conference this week. the conversations that we are having are like sharing ideas and sharing like, what question are you sitting with? And did you just hear that? Oh my gosh, that was a mic drop moment. And people are exchanging information. So the community of believers that there can be a different way is growing. And so I would say, I don't know that the people that are here don't believe, they just may not be aware. And so like the more that we can share that, like, this is what this experience is about. These are the things that we learned through this experience. These are the relationships that are formed. I've gone to a couple of uplifts. Actually, it's my third uplift, and it feels like a reunion when I see people from the last time. That now becomes community, and in that connection and that strength of community, impact happens.
The words that you shared very intentionally were beautiful. This community should be about nourishing and nurturing the human soul.
Yeah.
It's such an enlightened view of the role of the people leader at a time when I think it's not controversial to say it's more challenging than ever being an employee. Employees, generally speaking, I think it's a fair generalization, are more confused than ever about what they expect from their employer. Here we are discussing this topic on a podcast called AI and the Future of Work. That arrangement of words is intentional. And so we're all wrestling with, how do we embrace innovation without losing the humanness of work and the meaning and purpose that we derive from work? How do you reconcile this collision course? I don't like that word. It's not a great word, but this complicated relationship between technology and humans in the workplace.
Yeah, I think it's a complex relationship, and you're right. Like the times that we are living in now, they feel fraught with, division and uncertainty and, lots of like questions. And so the ground that people are standing on, it feels like it's shaking, right? It's not steady. And I think that people have come to look at their places of work as a place that they should be able to find steadiness. And even that, with the news of layoffs and, how jobs are changing, and even the conversation around AI feels very uncertain and scary. And at the end of the day, the bills will come month after month, and we need to be able to pay them. And so there's just a very real survival need, I think, that's being triggered in this moment. And that there's fear with that, of course. And I think that there's also possibility. But I think that possibility has to be grounded in humanness. And we can't just talk about AI through the lens of efficiency. I think if we only do that, we're going to be lost. But if we're able to talk about how AI can contribute to human flourishing, contribute even to things like saving our home planet, I think that's where you can have the turn. And well, I was thinking about this because my mom, when I was younger, used to write. I'm the oldest of five, so I have four siblings. And during the Christmas holiday, she would write our names in shorthand on the gift because we couldn't read it, because no one was writing in shorthand at that point, right? It was a skill that was no longer used in the day today. I think just like then, there were skills and there are things that are changing. With AI, skills will shift. The things that we use and do in our day to day are going to shift. But if we can ground it in what will remain, our curiosity, our judgment, our ability to think critically, our problem solving, those are like uniquely human capabilities, skills, and traits. That's not going to go away. How we execute those, that's going to shift and change. But I think if we can shift from being afraid of that to like thinking through the lens of how does that flourishing now happen now with AI, not as a against or a counter, I think that's the conversation we need to have.
You're saying all the right things, and yet it's so hard to operationalize. We want employees to feel like AI, all technology is an ally, not an adversary. What has Patagonia figured out maybe that others could learn from?
I think it's a work in progress figuring it out. And one thing that I've learned in my time at Patagonia is that while we have, a big brand or a big voice, we don't believe that we're the sole solutioners, right? The power is in the convening of conversations. The power is in coming together in coalition and in community to be able to figure these things out. So I think that that's one thing that is essential for us not to be operating separately or individually and not sharing, but really coming together. I think I like to use the term like fellow travelers kind of on this journey that are aligned from that values lens to say, like, how are we going to talk about this? How are we going to figure this out? This is what I've figured out. What have you figured out? And actually sharing. I think that's really important. The second thing that I think is we have to have real human honest conversations. Jobs will change, skills will change. And so how can we be honest about the fact that there will be some things that will go away? They will be no more because it is changing. There'll be some things that will be automated, some things that will be augmented, and then there's going to be brand new. Like, we don't even know what it is, right? And so I think if you can segment it in those ways and have conversation around that, it can help take some of the fear away. And so then it's not so much around, is AI going to take my job? It becomes how I use the technology is the difference maker. I also think technology is created by human beings. And so if we are focused on the human beings that are evolving the technology and we're thinking about our data, like, what's it pulling from? How are we tuning? How are we teaching the models? Those various things. If we lean in on that, and I think that requires humans, that it makes a difference.
Today's sponsor is a product I'm happy to promote. It's Superhuman Mail. The central theme of this podcast is using tech to make work more human. It's dehumanizing when we feel like we're working for AI instead of using it to discover more better work to do. Superhuman Mail does just that. It's the global phenomenon widely known in tech circles as the cheat code for productivity. It's almost single-handedly responsible for all the inbox zero memes you see in your feed. Connect Claude, ChatGPT, Gemini, or your favorite AI tools to the Superhuman Mail inbox and calendar. Search emails with natural language, draft replies in your voice, check read statuses, set reminders, schedule meetings, and send, all from your AI tool of choice. Sign up for Superhuman Mail today using the link in the show notes and achieve email nirvana. You'll feel less overwhelmed and ready to be your best self at work. Now back to today's amazing episode. There are two very different approaches to leadership that various leaders are adopting, and try not to bait the witness.
Mm-hmm.
But curious to get your perspective on what I'm calling a spectrum. On the one hand, leaders can be very confident and, demonstrate to their teams that they have all the answers and they kind of, have a path. They know where this is headed. The other end of the spectrum, and you can even disagree with the spectrum, but is leaders that maybe are vulnerable and are leading out with, it is a confusing time for everyone. And together, maybe we'll back into the answers, but it's going to take time. Where's Theresita on that spectrum?
Yeah. You know what? The older I get, the more I know that I don't know. I was having this conversation with my oldest. He's an adult. And literally, I'm like, his name's Frederick. I'm like, Frederick, the older I get, the more I know that I don't know. And I think that that feels really scary, especially for a more senior leader. You're like, I'm expected to know. I'm supposed to like point the way that we're going, right? Like set the tone, all of the things. So what I do think though is important within that is the grounding in who you are and coming back to purpose. For me, I come back to what is my purpose. I know that I have purpose on this earth. So I ground in that. What are my values? And the things around me, they are going to change. They are going to shift. But what will hold steady is that. And if I can say, I may not know all of the how, but if I know that this is who I am and I can anchor back to that, then we can navigate the how, because those become decision filters, like choice filters for where we go. The other thing I know to be true in that, and I do feel like I firmly sit on the vulnerability side of things. The other thing I know to be true is the power in community. I can't figure this out on my own. You can't figure it out on your own, but together we can unlock things. And I think if we're able to come together in community, honestly, like sit truly with the realities, ask the questions, I do think that we can get to solutions on the other side. And the last thing I'll say with that is I like to sit with the questions. Are we asking the right questions? More so than what's the answer.
I love that answer, and I didn't want to put words in your mouth, but it is clear that is genuinely, we're only just getting to know each other, but that's genuinely how you approach the task. And me editorializing, but that's what the best leaders are doing today, is acknowledge that is leadership, is acknowledging to your teams that together we will find the answers, but I don't have them any more than you do, and that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that I feel like is pervasive in leadership culture today, as AI infiltrates the workplace, is that leaders have some, again, try not to editorialize, but somewhat arbitrary metrics by which they're expected to measure the impact of AI on productivity, profitability, output, based on, maybe some antiquated measure of, what the team is supposed to accomplish. Given what you've been talking about, your leadership style, how do you coach your team and your leaders around the company about how we embrace the spirit of AI, innovation, growth, without using it as a blunt object to dehumanize people at work?
Yeah. It's a good question. I've been thinking a lot about AI, how you measure, how do we want to think about it? Where I've landed is I believe that as you go deeper into whatever your tools that you're going to use, your systems, it's going to reveal where you are strong and where you are weak. So it's going to reveal cracks in the foundation that are not necessarily technology solves. It's going to tie back to culture. It's going to tie back to where you have strong systems. It's going to tie back to where you have like strong, open, honest, direct, two-way communication, and where that lacks. It's going to point to things that are not actually AI things to be solved, but it's going to shine a light and a magnifying glass on that. And so I do think that I don't know. I think I've been to every conference and there's an AI conversation because that's the age and the era that we're in, but it's not the solution and the answer to everything. I think it is something within or an ecosystem, even maybe a better analogy, where people are thinking, they're building new skills and capabilities, like they're operating in different ways, but ultimately this kind of human ecosystem that we're hopefully nurturing and being really intentional about its design, AI will be a component of it, but it won't be the sole conversation.
Well said. We have a lot of conversations on this podcast about what it means to exercise AI responsibly. And I like to have the discussion with all people leaders because not enough leaders out there are thinking about what could go wrong. We're only thinking about what could go right.
Yeah.
And that's a very expensive flaw in our logic. Any examples from perspective of a people leader, Theresita, of where maybe you've evaluated ways that you could use AI and you or someone on your team has said, wait, that use of personally identifiable information or, that use of automated decisions in hiring or who gets promotions or various things that we need to ask ourselves, does it cross not necessarily ethical, but a boundary that we're not comfortable crossing? And any examples of where you've had to kind of wrestle with not what AI can do, but what it should do?
Yeah. Well, I think that's the exact question. Like, what should it do? And it goes back to the fact that garbage in, garbage out. First of all, it's only as good as the data that's being put into it. And if you're not like checking and thoughtful around that, you can get to really unintended consequences that impact people's access to opportunity, that impact who's in the room and who's not in the room. I think about things like if you say like, show me the picture of a leader. Have you heard of that? Like sadly, the exercise that's done, it says, hey, show me the visual of a leader. Like, what's a CEO look like? What's this fill in the blank like, or this senior leader? And it is a white man, not just any white man, a very slender, good looking, tall with good hair white man. Right. And so I think about that and I'm like, that's just one output. And so we have to be thoughtful when it comes down to selection of people and how we hire and who gets access to opportunity and who gets access to learning and development. Or even when you think about it on a customer lens or a product lens, you have to be thoughtful about that up front. And so one of the things I feel really good about is that we've said, we're not going to bury our heads in the sand around AI because it is here. We are in that era, right? So to do that would be irresponsible. But we're going to take a responsible path, which is one, grounded in values. It's two, really looking at it from different lenses, not just legal, but like really thinking our justice and belonging leader is deeply engaged in our work around how do we think about this from a ethical, moral perspective. Looking at pieces like, are we teaching people kind of the guide, I'll call it the boundaries on like how you should use it and where you need to be really thoughtful or cautious in the information that you're putting in. I think it's irresponsible for us not to put those guidelines out and to have some kind of hard and fast structures to support that and teach people around that. And then I think the piece becomes judgment is a uniquely human trait. But now the question I'm sitting with is like, how do you teach that judgment? Like, how do you start to hone that over time? What does that look like? And so one thing that we've really intentionally said as a company is like, we're not going to bury our heads in the sand, but we also don't need to be the first person out of the gate. So we want to be measured and thoughtful in what we're doing, how we're doing it, how we test, how we experiment, how we learn. And so I think having a learning culture becomes more important than ever, where you can experiment, you can learn, you can have more like kind of safe to fail, I'll call them experiments, so that if you're seeing, wait a minute, we're getting an outcome that is not as intended, we can stop that, learn from that, and do something different. I think that becomes more important than ever.
We had a great guest on this podcast named Dr. Meredith Broussard, and she wrote a book called More Than a Glitch. And she's a professor at NYU, and she pioneered this field called algorithmic accountability. Mm-hmm. And one of the colorful examples that she shared on the podcast, and it's in her book as well, is what she calls the racist soap dispenser. Mm. here's what happened. So it turns out, this is a real story, certain brands of soap dispenser put in restrooms all around the world do not detect darker skin as being skin. And it turns out the data that was used to train the soap dispenser on what skin looks like was disproportionately represented by skin of a certain color.
Yeah.
It literally would not dispense soap to humans looking to wash their hands.
I know this to be true.
Okay. I'm so mortally offended that that is a real story.
It is a real
Apparently, the world actually works that way, and it makes me so sad.
Yes, it does. It makes me sad. It also makes it very difficult for me to wash my hands. Right? And so basic access to basic things that we all should have access to.
If there was a human right.
Oh, yes. Becomes denied because of that. I think, yes, it is real.
I use this example when some people might think, it's a Silicon Valley type lecturing me about what could go wrong from an ivory tower. And no, this is real.
Mm-hmm.
We have the power to make the decisions to define a world where no soap dispensers are racist.
Indeed, we do.
We need to accept responsibility.
Yeah. There was a talk that we were in earlier, which was so beautiful, and it talked about a greeting that in South Africa, and which translates to "I see you," and like the power of being seen. And I firmly believe that to be witnessed, to be seen, is to be healed, etc. And so what I think about are, there are things like that with soap dispensers, or like the automatic, like when the water comes on automatically and you're like, do you see me? You don't see me. I can't get access to water. Or even things like when digital cameras first came out, they really could not see the full color spectrum. And so depending on your shading and your tone, the quality of your picture was or your image was highly impacted. So we have examples of this throughout, like humans being human, right? And so I feel like we actually know, and this is where I go back to, it's not just an AI thing. It's going to reveal, it's going to shine a magnifying glass on the things that are already broken. And so how do we go in as wide open, clearly acknowledging these realities, but then bringing the skepticism and bringing the goodness of our thinking to how we can do that differently.
AI is sadly perfectly designed to replicate human bias.
Exactly.
Now, we're about out of time. I've got to get you off the hot seat, but not before answering one last important question for me.
Okay.
You and I share a mutual friend, Scott Potasky, wonderful leader. I know you worked with him at Starbucks, and in preparation for this, I had asked him for a question that I should ask Theresita that other people might not know to ask.
Okay.
And he said, when you worked together at Starbucks, that what really stood out to him is you cared deeply about community and belonging. And so I want to close with this question for you. There are a lot of people who maybe look different or feel like they might be disadvantaged because of how they look, or who knows what, the color of their skin, where they were born, who knows what. But whether you're talking to my daughters or people of different backgrounds, etc., who feel like today's world has construed against them.
Mm-hmm.
You've achieved an enormous amount of success, being who you are, being a champion for your values, inspiring others. What do you say to the young girls, the people who might feel like they don't have the advantage that others have? How can they achieve the kind of success that Theresita has achieved?
I would go back to, I'll actually tell you more about my origin story. So my grandparents, who have now passed, but were huge in my life, Willie and Pearl are their names. My grandfather had a 3rd grade education and my grandmother an 8th grade education. They are the wisest, most learned people that I know. And having that level of education was not because they didn't have the smarts to do so. It was because they grew up in the South in a system, in an environment where they were not allowed to. They had to go and work and contribute to their families, and they were not able to go to school. So throughout my entire lifetime, they poured into me. You can do anything you put your mind to. Learn everything that you can. Never stop learning. Never stop being curious. They were the ones who said, read these books, their house from like floor to ceiling, books everywhere. I've tried to replicate that. I love them. And it was around education, which was withheld from them. They were like, I will make sure my children and my grandchildren have access to education because it opens doors. But what I learned even more so than the formal education was the tenacity around being curious, asking questions. And when you walk into a room knowing that your presence matters and it is a difference maker and the world needs you. And so you will walk into spaces that they may not see all of your light. And while that's not okay, I say, don't let that stop you. Follow the question, follow the curiosity, follow the passion, and the opportunities are going to come. And then lean into those relationships and connections. I will say Scott was one of those relationships and connections in my life where I felt like he was someone who poured in and opened doors and opened possibility. You will find those people that will see you and see your light and will open doors and possibility. But you got to follow the question and the curiosity and be tenacious enough not to give up.
Brilliant story. Everyone who's listening who thinks that you may not be able to achieve your dreams, rewind the tape, listen to Theresita describe her origin story. That was beautiful. And let this whole conversation just be a reminder that good humans really do have all of our best interests at heart. We're a small but growing community. And when we come together with a common purpose and a shared vision about what the future of humans at work, partnering with technology can look like, it exists. We're making progress every day. And gosh, this is a special one. We are all out of time this week on AI and the future of work. But just again, my thank you to Theresita. This is a lovely conversation.
Thank you.
And of course, we're back next week with another fascinating guest.
Yo, it's the end of the show. Time to power it down. AI's the sis, but humans wear the crown. Team human in the house, got the vibe so clever. Dan Turchin from People Brain, making us better. We learned about AI for humans. We're ready to conquer the future. That's all for now. See you next time.